In a town where everyone knew the price of everything, one woman was about to discover that some things can't be measured in dollars. What began as a routine loan rejection would become the most important decision Eleanor Chambers ever made. But first, she had to lose everything she thought mattered. If stories about finding what truly matters speak to you, consider joining this community by subscribing. And I'd love to know, where are you listening from today? Drop your town or city in the comments below. Eleanor Chambers sat behind her father's mahogany desk, the same desk where Howard Chambers had built Riverside Falls Community Bank into something respectable. She smoothed her navy suit jacket and returned her attention to the loan application before her, the fifth rejection she'd signed that morning. The knock on her office door was soft, almost apologetic. "Come in," Eleanor called, not looking up. The man who entered wore work boots that had seen better years, jeans with honest dirt on the knees, and a flannel shirt rolled to his elbows. He held a manila folder against his chest like a shield. "Mr. Forrester," she said, gesturing to the chair. "Please, sit down." Daniel Forrester sat on the edge of the chair, placed the folder on her desk, and waited. Eleanor opened it. Inside were handwritten business plans, sketches of furniture drawn with surprising skill, a rough budget calculated on graph paper. She scanned the summary. Current residence, Pine Grove Trailer Park. Collateral, none. Savings, minimal. "You want to open a carpentry workshop?" Eleanor said. "Yes, ma'am. There's an empty warehouse on River Street. I've got the skills, got clients. Just need equipment and the first few months to get established." His voice was steady but quiet. Eleanor looked at the sketches again. A rocking chair with delicate spindles. A dining table with inlaid walnut. These weren't rough pieces. They were art. But art didn't pay the bank back if things went wrong. "Mr. Forrester, I can see you're talented, but the bank's lending policies require collateral or proven stable income. Based on your application, I can't approve this loan." Something flickered in his eyes, gone quickly. He nodded once and stood. "I understand. Thank you for your time, Ms. Chambers." He didn't argue. He simply turned and walked toward the door. Eleanor watched through her window as he crossed the parking lot to a pickup truck that had more rust than paint. The truck coughed twice before starting. She turned back to her desk, reaching for the next application. Then she saw it. The manila folder still sitting where Daniel had left it. He'd forgotten to take it. Eleanor picked it up, meaning to call him back. But he was already gone. She found herself opening the folder again, looking more carefully. Beneath the business plans were more sketches, dozens of them. And tucked in the back, a photograph. A young girl with dark braids and a gap-toothed smile. Someone had written on the back, "Lily, age 7, first day of school." That evening, Eleanor drove home through streets she could navigate with her eyes closed. Her Victorian house on Maple Street stood 3 stories tall, painted cream with dark green shutters. She was still carrying Daniel Forrester's folder, and dark clouds were gathering as she pulled into her driveway. She was reaching for her keys when she heard hammering from next door. Mrs. Peterson's house had a broken window. Eleanor looked over and saw Daniel working in the side yard, wrestling with sheets of plywood. The wind was picking up, pulling at his shirt. Eleanor stood on her porch watching. He was covering the broken window with efficient movements. Mrs. Peterson appeared with a coffee mug, tried to offer it. Daniel shook his head, smiled, said something Eleanor couldn't hear. The first drops of rain began to fall. Daniel finished as the rain intensified, gathered his tools, jogged toward his truck. Thunder cracked overhead. Eleanor watched him reach the truck just as a massive tree limb came crashing down. It hit the hood with a sound like a gunshot, glass exploding, metal crumpling. Daniel stood in the rain, staring at his destroyed truck, his only vehicle. Eleanor didn't think. She grabbed her umbrella and walked across her lawn until she stood beside him. "Mr. Forrester, you should come inside." He turned, surprised. "I'm fine, Miss Chambers. Your truck is destroyed. The storm isn't stopping. Come inside, please." Lightning flashed. He nodded. They ran to her porch. Eleanor unlocked the door, ushered him inside. He stood dripping on her hardwood floors, completely out of place in her pristine house. "I'll get coffee. The kitchen is this way." She led him through, handed him towels, busied herself with the coffee maker. "Sit down. You're soaked through." He sat stiffly. Eleanor poured coffee, took the chair across from him. Rain hammered the windows. "I saw you fixing Mrs. Peterson's window," Eleanor said. "She needed help." Daniel wrapped his hands around the mug. "Can't have her going into winter with broken windows. She paid you. Didn't want payment. Not everything's a transaction, Miss Chambers." The words weren't accusatory, just fact. But Eleanor felt them anyway. She thought of his loan application, her neat rejection. "You forgot your folder at the bank." His jaw tightened. "I'll pick it up tomorrow. The sketches are beautiful. You're very talented." Not talented enough, apparently. Now there was an edge to his voice. Eleanor couldn't blame him. "It's not about talent. It's about risk assessment, collateral. I know. I've heard it before." Daniel set down his mug. "Why keep trying, right? I have a niece. Lily. She's 7. My sister died 2 years ago. I got custody because there was nobody else. She lives with me in a trailer that's too small, goes to a school where kids make fun of her. I want to give her better. The workshop isn't just a dream, Ms. Chambers. It's my plan to give that little girl stability." Eleanor thought of the photograph. Lily, age 7, first day of school. She felt something crack inside her chest. "I'm sorry about your sister. Not looking for sympathy. Just a chance." Daniel stood, carried his mug to the sink. "But I understand you've got policies. Thank you for the coffee." He moved toward the door. Eleanor's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, saw her mother's text. "Board meeting moved to tomorrow. They're questioning your management. Be ready." Eleanor's face must have changed because Daniel paused. "You all right?" "No, not really." Eleanor looked up at him. "The bank's board thinks I'm too cautious. My mother's on the board. They want me more aggressive, or they'll bring in someone else. So when you say I hide behind policies, you're right. Because I'm terrified of making the wrong choice." Daniel studied her. "Sounds like you're already losing it. Just slowly." Her phone buzzed again. Thomas Briggs. "Eleanor, we need to discuss bank leadership." "I don't want your charity, Miss Chambers," Daniel said quietly. "That's not what It is, though. You feel bad. I get it. But I don't need you to feel bad." Eleanor looked at her phone, at the messages, at the careful life crumbling around her. All her life, she'd done what was expected. And where had it gotten her? She looked at Daniel Forrester, dripping on her floor, proud and broke and trying to build something good for a little girl who'd lost everything. "Come to the bank tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. I have a proposal." Daniel frowned. "Ms. Chambers, not charity, business. I need work done on this house. Painting, repairs. You need money. I'll hire you, fair rate. That's not charity. That's a transaction." He studied her face. "Why?" because everything doesn't have to be a transaction. But this one can be, if that makes you feel better. The silence stretched. 9 o'clock, Daniel said finally. I'll be there. Eleanor arrived at Riverside Falls Community Bank Tuesday morning to find the board members already waiting in the conference room. Her mother, Margaret, sat at the head of the table, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun, her expression unreadable. Thomas Briggs, the town council president, sat to her right, shuffling papers with the air of a man who'd already made up his mind. Eleanor, Margaret said, we need to discuss the bank's direction. The meeting lasted 90 minutes. They questioned every decision Eleanor had made in the past year. Too conservative, Briggs said. Declining profits, her mother added. The regional chain had expressed interest in acquiring them, and perhaps fresh leadership was needed. Eleanor defended her approach, but she could feel the ground shifting beneath her. She'd inherited her father's bank, but not his authority. When it finally ended, Eleanor walked back to her office on unsteady legs. Through the glass partition, she saw Daniel Forrester in the lobby, holding her umbrella. He'd come, despite everything. Mr. Forrester, she said, approaching him. Thank you for waiting. You said 9 o'clock. Eleanor led him to her office, closed the door. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Eleanor opened her desk drawer and pulled out a notepad. My house needs painting. The trim is rotting in places, needs replacing. The back porch has loose boards. The gutters need cleaning and repair. She wrote as she spoke. I'm offering you the job. Cash payment, enough to fix your truck and then some. Daniel watched her carefully. Why are you doing this? Because I need the work done, and you need the money. It's a legitimate transaction. Is it? His eyes searched her face. Or is this guilt? Eleanor set down her pen. Maybe it's both. Does that matter? Daniel considered this. After a long moment, he nodded. When do I start? Tomorrow, if you can manage it. They shook hands across her desk. His palm was rough with calluses, his grip firm. As Daniel left, Eleanor noticed Linda Morris, the bank's teller, watching through the glass. Linda's eyes were bright with curiosity, and her phone was already in her hand. By Wednesday afternoon, the whole town knew. Eleanor heard the whispers at the post office, saw the glances at the grocery store. At the diner, conversation stopped when she entered. That evening, her mother called. What are you thinking, hiring that man? Margaret's voice was sharp. People are talking, Eleanor. He's doing repairs on my house, that's all. That's not all, and you know it. The board is already questioning your judgment. This doesn't help. Eleanor hung up without responding. She stood at her kitchen window, watching Daniel work on the side of her house. He moved with quiet efficiency, scraping away old paint, replacing rotted wood. He'd been there since dawn, arriving early, working late. Thursday, Reverend Hensley stopped Eleanor after the church auxiliary meeting. Everything all right, Eleanor? His tone was gentle but concerned. I've been hearing some talk around town. People always talk, Reverend. True enough. Just wanted you to know I'm here if you need someone to listen. Friday afternoon, Daniel was finishing the west side of the house when a young girl appeared at the end of the driveway. She was small, maybe 7, with dark braids and a backpack that looked too heavy for her thin shoulders. Her jacket had a tear at the elbow. Uncle Danny. The girl ran toward him. Daniel climbed down from the ladder quickly. Lily, what are you doing here? Where's the bus? I missed it. Lily's voice was small. I was in the library and I forgot the time, and when I came out everyone was gone. So you walked? Lily, that's 2 miles. I knew you were here." She looked up at him, and Eleanor saw tears starting in her eyes. "Uncle Danny, there was a fight at school." "What kind of fight?" "Marcus Delaney said mean things about where we live. He said you were working for the rich lady because you're her charity case. I told him to shut up, and he pushed me, and I pushed him back, and I tore my jacket." The words came out in a rush, and now the tears were falling. "The principal called you, but you didn't answer because you were working." Daniel knelt in front of her, examining the torn jacket, the scraped knee visible through her torn jeans. His face was tight with anger, but his voice stayed gentle. "It's okay. We'll fix the jacket. The knee will heal." Eleanor had been watching from the porch. Now she came down the steps. "Lily, I'm Eleanor. Would you like to come inside? I have bandages for that knee." Lily looked at her uncle. Daniel hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but nodded. "Go ahead, sweetheart. I need to put my tools away." Inside, Eleanor settled Lily at the kitchen table with a glass of milk and a sandwich. The girl ate hungrily, and Eleanor wondered when she'd last had lunch. She cleaned the scraped knee with gentle hands, applied antiseptic and a bandage. "Does it hurt much?" Eleanor asked. "Not really." Lily looked around the kitchen, her eyes wide. "Your house is really big." "Too big for just me," Eleanor admitted. "Do you like to read, Lily?" "I saw you were in the library." Lily's face brightened. "I love reading. Miss Peterson lets me stay after school sometimes when Uncle Danny is working late. She has so many books. I have a library here too. Would you like to see it?" Eleanor led Lily down the hall to the room that had been her father's study. Floor-to-ceiling shelves lined the walls, filled with leather-bound volumes and old first editions. Lily gasped. "You have all these?" "I do. My father collected them. Here, this one is special." Eleanor pulled down a first edition of Little Women, its cover worn but beautiful. "It's very old, but you can look at it if you're careful." Lily took the book with reverent hands, settled into the leather chair by the window, and began to read. Eleanor watched her for a moment, saw the tension leave the girl's small shoulders, saw her disappear into the story. She returned to the kitchen where Daniel was standing in the doorway, watching his niece in the library. His expression was complicated, gratitude and embarrassment mixed together. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for being kind to her. She's a sweet girl. The kids at school, they can be cruel. She tries not to let it bother her, but I know it does." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "I'm doing my best. But best isn't always enough. You're raising her alone. That takes courage. Doesn't feel like courage. Feels like stumbling in the dark most days." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching Lily read. Eleanor felt something shift inside her, some careful distance she'd maintained from the world beginning to close. "The town gossip," Daniel said. "It's hurting. But I need the work. If you want me to stop coming—" "I don't care what they think," Eleanor said, surprising herself with the vehemence of it. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and something passed between them. Something unspoken and fragile, like the first warm day after a long winter. The moment was shattered by the sound of a car in the driveway. Eleanor looked out to see her mother's silver Mercedes pulling up. Margaret emerged, her face tight with disapproval. "Eleanor," Margaret called. "We need to talk, now." She glanced at Daniel, and the disdain in her eyes was barely concealed. "Alone." Eleanor's stomach tightened. Through the library doorway, she could see Lily still reading, peaceful, and safe. Daniel stood beside her, proud and broke and trying so hard to build something good. And her mother stood in the driveway, representing everything Eleanor had been taught to value: status and reputation and careful respectability. "I'll get Lily," Daniel said quietly, moving toward the library. Margaret walked into the house without invitation, her heels clicking on the hardwood. She waited until Daniel and Lily had left, watched through the window as they climbed into a borrowed truck. "Eleanor, what are you doing?" Margaret's voice was cold. "Having work done on my house." "Don't be obtuse. That man, that child, the whole town is talking. The board meets Monday to vote on your future as bank president. Thomas Briggs has enough votes to force you out unless you demonstrate sound judgment." Margaret moved closer. Hiring him, being seen with him socially, has become evidence of instability. He's doing good work. That man is a liability. End whatever this is, or lose everything your father built. Margaret paced Eleanor's living room, her anger filling the space like smoke. "Do you understand what's at stake? Your father spent 40 years building this bank. 40 years of careful decisions, of earning trust, of establishing our family's reputation in this town. And you're throwing it away for what? A handyman with a sad story?" "He's not just a handyman. He's a skilled carpenter trying to give his niece a better life. And that's admirable, Eleanor, truly. But it's not your responsibility." Margaret stopped pacing, faced her daughter directly. "The board meets Monday. Thomas Briggs wants you out. He has 3 votes already, needs only 1 more. If you continue this, whatever this is with Daniel Forrester, you'll give him the ammunition he needs." Eleanor felt the walls closing in. "What do you want me to do?" "End it. Pay him for the work completed and tell him you found someone else. Distance yourself before Monday." Margaret's voice softened slightly. "I know you have a kind heart. It's one of the things your father loved most about you. But kindness without wisdom is just weakness, and the world will exploit it." After Margaret left, Eleanor sat alone in the gathering darkness. She didn't turn on the lights. Through the window, she could see where Daniel had been working, the fresh paint bright against the old siding, the careful repairs he'd made. She thought about Lily in the library, the wonder in her eyes, the peace that had settled over her as she read. Everything her mother said made sense. It was practical, reasonable, the smart choice. But Eleanor was tired of smart choices that felt wrong. She found the envelope on her porch table the next morning. Inside was the cash she'd paid Daniel, untouched, and a note in careful handwriting. This was never about the money. "Thank you for your kindness to Lily. I'll finish the painting tomorrow, then I'll stay away. I'm sorry for the trouble." Eleanor stood holding the envelope, something breaking inside her chest. She'd tried to help, and all she'd done was make things worse. For Daniel. For Lily. For herself. Saturday morning. Eleanor drove to the bank alone. The building was empty, silent in a way that felt ominous. She went to the archives in the basement, looking for something, though she wasn't sure what. Some answer, some guidance from her father about what to do. She found the old files and metal cabinets that hadn't been opened in years. Loan records from the 1980s, back when her father was building the bank from nothing. Eleanor pulled out folders at random, scanning applications and approvals, trying to understand how her father had made decisions. Then she found a file that made her stop breathing. A loan application from Joseph Forrester, dated 1983. Request denied. Insufficient collateral. But beneath it was another document, a personal letter from her father to Joseph, dated 6 months earlier. In it, Howard Chambers thanked Joseph Forrester for a loan, an unsecured loan of $15,000, when no bank would help him. That money had saved Howard's bank, allowed him to weather a crisis and rebuild. Eleanor kept digging. More applications from Joseph Forrester over the years, all denied. Her father had forgotten the kindness, or chose not to remember. He'd built his fortune on the trust of a man who had little, then closed the door when that man needed help. Eleanor was still reading when her phone rang. The hospital. Daniel had been in an accident. His borrowed truck's brakes had failed on Route 52. He was alive, but hurt, and Lily was missing. She'd heard about the accident, panicked, and run away. No one could find her. Eleanor grabbed her keys and ran. The hospital parking lot was chaos. Police cars, neighbors searching, Daniel's voice hoarse from calling Lily's name. Eleanor found him in the emergency room, a bandage on his forehead, his arm in a sling, trying to leave despite the doctor's protests. "I have to find her," Daniel said. "She's been gone 3 hours. She's terrified of being alone, of being sent away. I have to find her." Eleanor put her hand on his shoulder. "I know where she is." She drove to her house, Daniel beside her, arguing that Lily wouldn't go there. It didn't make sense. But Eleanor remembered the girl's face in the library, the peace she'd found there. She understood running to the place that felt safest. Eleanor unlocked her front door and walked quietly to the library. Lily was there, curled in the leather chair, the first edition of Little Women open in her lap, tears streaming down her face. "Lily," Eleanor said softly. The girl looked up, her face crumpling. "I thought if Uncle Danny died, they'd take me away. I wanted to stay somewhere safe, somewhere that felt like it could be home." Eleanor knelt beside the chair, pulled Lily into her arms. "Your uncle is fine. He's here, he's safe, and nobody is taking you anywhere." Daniel appeared in the doorway, and Lily launched herself at him, sobbing. He held her with his good arm, pressing his face into her hair, whispering that everything was okay. Everything would be okay. Eleanor stepped back, giving them space, feeling like an intruder in this moment of relief and love. But then Daniel reached out his hand to her, a gesture of inclusion, of gratitude. Eleanor took it. And for a moment, the three of them stood together in the quiet library. The moment shattered when Eleanor heard voices in the hallway. She turned to see her mother, Thomas Briggs, and 2 other board members standing in her doorway. "Eleanor," Margaret said, her voice carefully controlled. "What is going on here?" Lily was missing. "I found her." Thomas Briggs looked at Daniel, at Lily, at Eleanor's hand still holding Daniel's. "This is exactly what we've been concerned about. Poor judgment, inappropriate boundaries, a complete lack of professional distance." "A child was missing," Eleanor said. "I helped find her. You've become involved with this man and his family to a degree that raises serious questions about your fitness to run the bank." Briggs crossed his arms. "The emergency board meeting is happening now, at the bank. You need to choose, Eleanor, them or your father's legacy." Margaret stood silent, her face pale. Daniel released Eleanor's hand, stepped back. "Go," he said quietly. "This is your life, your family's bank. We'll be fine." Eleanor looked at him, at Lily still clinging to his side, at the board members waiting in judgment. She thought about the files in the basement, about Joseph Forrester's kindness and her father's selective memory. She thought about sitting in her office every day, turning down people with dreams because of policies and procedures and fear. No, Eleanor said. Eleanor, her mother started. No. The board can meet without me. If they want to vote me out for helping a lost child, for hiring a good man to do honest work, then they should do it. But I'm not going to stand in front of them and defend basic human decency. Thomas Briggs's face reddened. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. Eleanor turned to her mother. I found something in the archives today. Files about Joseph Forrester, Daniel's father. Did you know he loaned Dad $15,000 in 1983? Saved the bank when no one else would help? Margaret's face went white. Dad never paid that kindness forward. He rejected Joseph's applications for years after, built his fortune on one man's trust, then forgot all about it. Eleanor's voice was steady. I won't make the same mistake. So if the board wants me out, fine. But I'm done defending a system that only helps people who don't need help. Thomas Briggs turned to Margaret. Talk sense into your daughter. But Margaret stood frozen, staring at Eleanor as if seeing her for the first time. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. I knew about Joseph Forrester. Your father told me, years later, when the guilt kept him awake at night. He wanted to make it right, but was too proud. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. I watched that pride eat at him until he died. The silence in Eleanor's living room was absolute. Thomas Briggs stood with his mouth half open, unprepared for Margaret's confession. Daniel held Lily closer, understanding dawning on his face. My father, Daniel said slowly. He helped your husband? Margaret nodded, unable to meet his eyes. $15,000 when we had nothing. No bank would touch us. Your father didn't know us, had no reason to trust us, but he did anyway. Howard never forgot it, but he never acknowledged it either. After he became successful, he couldn't bear the reminder of when he'd needed help. So he rejected my father's applications. Daniel's voice was flat. Yes, and I said nothing because I'd learned to value reputation over integrity. Margaret looked at Eleanor. I taught you the same lessons. I made you afraid to take risks, to trust people, to believe in anything that couldn't be measured on a balance sheet. Thomas Briggs cleared his throat. This is all very touching. But the board needs to meet. Then let's meet, Eleanor said. Right now. 20 minutes later, they gathered in Eleanor's dining room. Margaret sat at one end, Eleanor at the other. Daniel had taken Lily upstairs, giving them privacy. Eleanor laid out the files. Joseph Forrester saved this bank in 1983. Without his loan, we wouldn't exist. My father built everything on that foundation, then spent years denying the man who made it possible. That's not sound business. That's cruelty disguised as policy. Ancient history, Briggs said. What does it matter now? Everything. Because we're still doing it. We reject people like Daniel, people with talent and determination, because they don't fit our risk models. We've become a bank that only helps people who don't need help. That's why we're failing. We're being cautious. We're dying slowly. Eleanor leaned forward. I propose we change our lending model. Create a small business fund, character-based lending for people who demonstrate skill and commitment. Real community banking. That's financial suicide, Briggs said. Is it? Or is it what my father should have done all along? Eleanor looked around the table. You want to vote me out? Fine. But first acknowledge what this bank really is. A monument to one man's pride and another man's forgotten generosity. Patricia Chen, a board member, spoke up. How would this fund work? Eleanor outlined her vision. Small loans, mentorship programs, partnerships with local businesses, calculated risk-taking based on character. She'd been thinking about it all night. Margaret listened without speaking. Finally, she stood. I own 35% of this bank. Enough to block any vote to remove Eleanor. I'm not blocking it to protect you, Eleanor. I'm blocking it because you're right. If we're going to honor your father's memory, it should be by fixing his mistakes, not repeating them. Thomas Briggs stood abruptly. This is absurd. I call for a vote right now. Call it, Eleanor said calmly. The vote was 3-2 in favor of keeping Eleanor. Briggs and one other voted against her. Patricia Chen voted in favor. The fifth member abstained. This isn't over, Briggs said, gathering his papers. Your fund will fail, and when it does, I'll be back. After they left, Eleanor and Margaret sat alone. Evening was falling, painting the sky gold and purple. There's something else, Margaret said quietly. She showed Eleanor an email. The regional bank offered $3 million. We could both walk away, start fresh somewhere else. Eleanor stared at the number. $3 million. No more board meetings, no more pressure. Freedom. We could take it, Margaret continued. Leave tomorrow, or you can stay. Implement your vision. Approve Daniel's loan, and I'll co-sign it, using my shares as collateral. Margaret's voice wavered. But Eleanor, if you stay, this town will never let you forget it. They'll watch every loan, wait for you to fail. Are you ready for that? Eleanor looked out the window. She could see Daniel's truck, the fresh paint on her house, the light upstairs where Lily was resting. She thought about the girl's face in the library, Daniel's sketches, her father's guilt that haunted him until he died. I'm ready, Eleanor said. 3 months later, Eleanor stood in the doorway of Daniel's carpentry workshop on River Street. The space was small but filled with light, sawdust dancing in sunbeams. Daniel was teaching Lily how to sand wood, his hands guiding hers, his voice patient. Not too hard. Let the paper do the work. That's it. Lily's tongue poked out in concentration. She'd grown in 3 months, seemed taller, more confident. She wore new jeans, a warm jacket. But more than that, she wore the expression of a child who knew she was safe. Daniel looked up, saw Eleanor, and smiled. It was real, unguarded. Eleanor smiled back. How's business? Eleanor asked, stepping inside. Good, really good. Mrs. Peterson ordered a bookshelf. The diner wants new tables. I'm booked through March. Daniel set down his tools. I never thanked you properly. For everything. You thank me every time you make a loan payment. Right on time, every month. That's just business. This is different. He gestured around. You gave me a chance when nobody else would. Gave Lily stability, gave me hope. That's worth more than money. Eleanor moved closer, running her hand along a half-finished table. You did the work. I just opened a door. You did more than that. They stood in comfortable silence, watching Lily work. The girl looked up and grinned. Eleanor, come see what I made. Eleanor examined the small wooden box Lily had been working on. Rough but charming, the joints slightly uneven, but held together with care. It's beautiful, Eleanor said. It's for you, to say thank you. Uncle Danny helped, but I did most of it myself. Eleanor took the box, felt tears prick her eyes. I'll treasure it. Thank you, Lily. Outside, Riverside Falls went about its business. The gossip had faded but never disappeared. People still talked about Eleanor Chambers and her choices, still whispered. Linda Morris still watched through the bank's glass partition. Thomas Briggs remained a vocal critic. Eleanor didn't care anymore. She'd learned that some people would always judge, and their opinions mattered less than she thought. What mattered was this: a workshop full of light, a little girl who'd found safety, a man building something real. Daniel walked Eleanor to the door. They stood on the threshold, winter sun warming their faces. "Dinner?" Daniel asked. "Nothing fancy, just me and Lily, and you if you want." Eleanor felt something bloom in her chest, something frozen for so long she'd forgotten it was there. Hope, or possibility, or just the simple joy of being seen by someone who understood what it meant to rebuild from nothing. "I'd like that," she said. As Eleanor drove back to the bank, she passed her house on Maple Street. The fresh paint gleamed, the repairs solid. It looked like a home now. Tonight she'd have dinner with Daniel and Lily. Tomorrow she'd review loan applications, looking for people with dreams who just needed someone to believe in them. On her desk at the bank sat two things: a photograph of Daniel, Lily, and Eleanor at the workshop opening, all smiling, and Daniel's original loan application, stamped in red ink. Approved. Sometimes the richest person in town is the one who never counted their wealth in dollars. Thanks for listening to this story. If it touched you, let me know in the comments. And tell me, where are you from?